All right. Time to talk about crows. Time to talk about crows in the Corvid Court. Um, I've got the Resistance Toolbox here, which I'll actually come back to in just a second. I want to actually realize I want to kind of like preface all of this with just talking for a second about Corvid Court. When did I first put this game out? Okay, yeah. So May of last year. That's what I thought. So Corvid Court came out May 2020. It was as I oftentimes say, a fever dream sort of game. It was one of those things that I wrote in about 48 hours, about across a 2 day period. Wrote the whole thing. Inspiration of Corvid Court comes from actually, believe it or not, um, Destiny, from a transmat effect that you can have in Destiny, where when you when you come back or spawn at a location, you can burst from a cloud of crows, essentially. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be cool if there was a game where that was just a thing you could do, where you could just burst into a cloud of crows and appear at places? And I thought that was a cool idea. And so I made a whole game based off of that one transmat effect. And it was called Corvid Court. And so Corvid Court is it's about crime. It's about bad people doing bad things. That's kind of my MO, or that was certainly my MO at the time when I designed this, because this was like 2 months after Score came out. I was very much into crime and stuff like that. The name Corvid Court, I think, got incepted into my head. Now I'm not going to be able to find it probably very quickly and easily in here, but uh, if you know me, you know that I love the resistance system. That's what Corvid Court is based off of. It's a resistance light. I got introduced to the resistance system because of Spire, which I've got here in my hands. And there is a group called the Corvid Court in this book, which, again, I'm probably not going to be able to find very quickly, and it doesn't really matter. It's a tiny little entry in this book, and the Corvid Court is actually it's Fey related, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's basically like a connection to, it's like an organization related to the Fey and everything like that. So it's not birds doing crime, which is what this is, but the name got incepted into my head. That got mixed with an obsessive amount of Destiny that I was playing in that Transmeta pack and turned into Corvid Court. And that was last year. And I wrote it using what I call Resistance Light. That's the system that I call it. What does that mean? It means it uses the Resistance Toolbox, but not completely. So the Resistance Toolbox is an SRD essentially that came out by Good Morning Brain Trust Gum Gum. Uh, the Resistance SRD basically says, hey, do you want to make something using our system that we made for Spire? Here's all the rules, or here's the things that you need. And I combed through this, and I basically said, I love Resistance. I've played Spire many times, and I like it. But there's a lot of things that I'm not like super in love with, or that I didn't need at the time. Because again, it was a 48-hour fever dream writing session. So I wasn't going to write all of the stuff that Resistance normally calls for. Um, all of the different types of Fallout, every class having different levels of advances that you get. This was supposed to be quick and easy, and so it was. And the biggest deviation is that I didn't use D10s, I used D6s because I just like D6s. And I changed the way that Fallout was triggered. In Fallout, triggering in Corvid Court is much more akin to almost like in Trophy, like Trophy Dark, when you're comparing certain dice to like the highest value of a tracked thing, essentially. Um, so in this case, you have stress going on, and if the highest die in a roll is less than the amount of stress you have, I think, then a Fallout happens, which is slightly different than how Fallout normally works in Resistance. It was faster. That was the point. Like I said, it's been over a year since I released Corvid Court, and I haven't actually looked at the rules in a while. Um, but the idea of it being faster was what I was going for. It was a great success. I really liked Corvid Court. Um, it's my most downloaded game, and that's because it was part of the large Black Lives Matter bundle from last year. So it's like proportionally way off in terms of downloads compared to everything else that I've ever done. Um, but I do think it's popular. I do think a lot of folks just dig the premise of it, and I think largely that's because of Maria's layout. I released my original version, which was my layout, when I didn't know anything about layout, and then Maria made it look cool. Um, so anyway, yeah, you should reread Resistance. Like reread the SRD. And what I'm realizing, looking at this SRD, because I just skimmed this a little bit before I went live, um, is that this toolkit that they released, this SRD, is for Resistance as seen in Spire, which is different than Resistance as seen in Heart. So Heart uses the Resistance system, but it makes some pretty big changes in terms of things like difficulty of dice, in terms of the way that characters are created, with the boon system. The boon system for advancement is like my favorite advancement system ever. I think it's so cool. I like a long time ago when Heart first came out in the Brain Trust Discord, I was talking with Viditya Valetti about how much I love Resistance. Like I think he knows how much I love it, and I just ranted and raved about how much I love the boon system in particular here. Um, and so there's some changes between Heart and Spire, and that's because they are different things. This is a body horror dungeon crawl, and this is a political resistance like revolution game. So naturally, there's going to be deviations in the system. But the toolkit, the SRD that they've released, as far as I can tell, having looked at it, at least when I first looked at it, it's a representation of Spire's approach to resistance, not Heart. So my plan for today is I want to go through this, and I want to kind of brainstorm if I was to make what I would call a resistance complete or full version of Corvid Court, expanding on the resistance light format that I have to incorporate more of the aspects of the resistance system into a bigger, fuller book for Corvid Court. What would I need to do? So we're going to have to kind of work under the assumption that this is using the Spire stuff, which means I'm going to like note things in here that are missing because I've read Heart and there's things in Heart that I really like. So we're going to go through this doc together and sort of make notes about Corvid Court stuff that we would need. What I've started here is just saying it already is Resistance Light. Resistance Full would be if I were to take everything from the SRD and put it into Corvid Court, which I don't think I'm going to do. I think I'm going to end up probably somewhere in a space called like Resistance Medium, which I think is still a Resistance game, right? Like just like Resistance Light is. But I want to take more of the stuff that I've seen in Spire and that I've seen in Heart that I really like, and I want to put them into Corvid Court in a complete book. Um, I'm realizing now that like I got all of my original ideas out of the way in the first half of the year. I made Lumen and I made Nova, and now the second half of the year I want to like go re-look at games that I put out last year and be like, okay, now that I've designed for a little while, how can I make these better? And so I want to start with Corvid Court because that's just one of my favorites. So let's go through the SRD. I'm curious, because like I see like haven't had a chance to play Heart. Has anybody else played a Resistance game? I'm always curious what people's exposure is to this system because I think Grant Howitt is a popular designer, a well-known name in the scene. I think Spire is a well-known name in the scene, but it kind of sits at that place like obviously there's 5e at the top. Then you have a lot of the popular indie games, your like big Powered by the Apocalypse games. You got your Blades in the Dark too. Like those are like the big indie games. And I think Spire isn't exactly at that level. I think it might be like at just the level below that in terms of popularity. And I think it's one of those games where a lot of people have read it or heard about it, but haven't played it. Um, but that's totally anecdotal. I could be totally talking out of my ass right now, right? Yes. So Ty is hitting something here that I think is something that I want to think about when I'm doing this Corvid Court stuff is the the dice resolution is slow. It is. That's why I liked Corvid Court, is it was much faster than um so I want to talk about what's fast and what's slow with um Spire and Heart. Heart especially feels slow for dice resolution. I mean, you're not supposed to be rolling a shit ton anyway, but still, it feels slow. I get that for sure. Dice Ghost played Heart and enjoyed it. Cool. So Ty has played a mini campaign. Really want to play Spire. Spire that ends up in Heart, yeah, because they've also like put out material for bringing Spire characters into Heart, which is kind of cool. Yeah, it's got dice pools. And you know me, I like dice pools, and I think that they can be fast. That's why I made Lumen. But dice pools seem to move slowly with this. You know what? I realize I don't have a copy of Corvid Court in front of me. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get Corvid Court. Okay, now I've got Corvid Court in front of me. Yeah, this looks familiar. It looks vaguely familiar. I happen to flip to my favorite spread in the whole book, the J. That's very cool. Okay. So let's go through the SRD. Let's go through the Resistance Toolkit, see what Grant and Chris say we need, and then think about what we want in terms of this stuff in Corvid Court. Ty says, I think the combo of dice pools and multiple tracks of HP is awesome, but yeah, it can bog down a little bit. Yes, so I think the stress track thing is like super, super cool. I love it. I'm in love with that. The idea that you have HP essentially in different things instead of um, like in 5e where it's just your big hit pool health, or in Blades where you just have stress, right? You just have like generic stress that you take, and then it can manifest into those harms. But still, like thinking about all the ways that you can be harmed and breaking it up into those categories that you see in Resistance is cool. Okay, so I don't really want to read like the welcome to Resistance, what can it, can't it do, how to use this, da, 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 da. I don't really care about all that. Okay, so here's the core mechanic of Resistance. Again, all of this working on the assumption that it is Spire based, because you'll see right away with the difficulty that if you're only familiar with Heart, this will look different. This will sound different than what you think Resistance is supposed to look like. So D10, right? It's still dice pools, but it's D10 dice pools, slightly more range to play with. Basically, 50% chance of failure, right? Anything between a 1 and a 5 is a failure with the possibility of critical failures. Um, and then 50% chance of success with ranges of success, with some sort of cost, success with no cost, and then critical success. So I like D10s. I don't have a problem with D10s. I don't have mine. I came so ill prepared. I don't have any of my dice or anything in front of me. I don't really need them. Um, I like D10s. I like D6s too, which is why I made Corvid Court with D6s. So that's like the first big question is, so I mean, let's just start with the core mechanic. It's still dice pools, right? It's dice pools. That's it. I'm not changing that part at all. That's gotta be there. The question is, D6 versus D10. D10 pros, right? What are the D10 pros? More range, which allows for crits, right? If you like crits in your games, then you want a die that has a wider range of results so that you can have that as a possibility. If we have 1 and 6 as critical failure and critical success on a D6, um, not fun. Now, you can still manifest critical failures and critical successes with a D6 dice pool. You would just look for things like if you happen to roll 2 sixes in your roll or 2 ones, um, which I get. Like, I see that in some games, and I'm sure I've probably included that in a game at some point. But like thinking about it, it doesn't feel good to me because, and this is just off the top of my head, if we're telling people it's you take the highest die, then it's not a completely true statement, right? It's highest die, but also check just in case you get 2 of these numbers, 1s and 6s. So it's like an extra check, a bit of extra cognitive load that you have to deal with. Um, Also, I just don't care about crits. I don't find crits exciting at all. I just don't find them exciting. I don't find them compelling. Especially with things like tracking things like damage and stuff like that. Like a critical success, meaning you do slightly more damage, just doesn't seem cool to me. Manifesting crits is like a interesting narrative control opportunity is kind of cool, but you know, D10 cons, they're rare. Like people just don't have them, right? It's just of the polyhedral dice, you can count on D6s and you can count on D20s, right? Yeah, exactly. D6 is so much more accessible. Serac really wants the D10s. I'm not saying the D10s are out. I just think that the primary benefit of the D10 being that because it has a wider range of the ability to add those crits is not compelling enough to be right now. But it could still be the case. I don't know. Could be. So pros of D6s, they are everywhere. Everyone has them. We can work with that assumption. Or that they are easily acquired by comparison to other dice. Other pros, they're familiar, and remove need for crits. D6 cons, less range, right? People like some variability. Like if you like variance in your rolls, you're not going to get as much variance in a D6 pool. So that's just something to think about. Okay. This is like a lot of stuff about D6s and D10s that I don't think I need to get fully into right now. I do need to just write down the idea of like crits, question mark, do I want them or do I not want them? That is entirely then dependent on the dice, as we've sort of talked about here. Anyway, you roll this, you pick the highest, and then you determine your success. Your success usually either means you do the thing, or if there's some stress involved, you either inflict stress onto an enemy if you're trying to like hurt somebody, or you take some sort of stress while trying to do the thing. So if you're trying to sneak past a guard and you succeed with some stress, it's not necessarily that the guard sees you, but maybe you sneak past, you turn the corner, but there's like a double duty of guards. Like there's more guards than you expected, and so you mark some stress in a stress track that like is tracking things like being quiet, or you drop something along the way. You mark part of your stress track that is with your goods that you own, right? So that's how you do it. Enemies don't roll. Um, that's a common thing in Resistance, which I like. I like enemies not rolling. All right, so here's the thing about difficulty. Difficulty Inspire is removing dice from the pool. Okay, so you roll. You're going to generate a pool based off of various things that you have, skills that you have, domains that you are an expert in, and then you're going to you take some of those dice away if it's an especially difficult task where like the enemy is really powerful. In Heart, you roll the full pool and remove top dice, which I've heard Grant and Chris talk about this. They believe this is harsher, and I agree. It is. It's harsher. So like, you have a 2d10 dice pool. You roll a 3 and a 10. You get really excited, but it was a difficulty 1. You have to remove the top 1 die from the pool. So that's tricky. If you go with this route, you need to account for rolling 0 dice. Right? You have to account for that. Groups, I'm not going to worry about this. Stress, we know this. Stress and resistances. This is what I want to talk about. All right, so stress and resistance. So you have these resistance tracks. Inspire, you've got 5, I think. See if I can just find the character sheet real quick. I won't be able to find it quick, but oh, I did. You have 5, and then you technically have armor. So blood, mind, silver, shadow, and reputation. So body, mind, resources with silver, shadow, and rep. So shadow is being unseen, clandestine. Rep is because it's a political revolution game. It's your reputation amongst the city, but it's also like access to your family. Like your family would turn on you in a heartbeat. That's something they talk a lot about. In Corvid Court, I've got 3 because it's resistance light. So let's think about how we might either expand that or keep it the same. So I've got 3 tracks. This is a horrible way of doing it. Should probably just download the PDF and put it on the screen. 3 tracks for stress: claw, eye, and beak. So what do claw, eye, and beak do? Claw, eye, beak. I want to like make feather one, but I don't know what feather is right now. But it just feels right. So claw is your body, right? So anything that's related to your body. So durability, bodily harm, endurance. I did with mental stability. So this is mind stuff. Level head, attention, that stuff. Beak is your social stuff, right? So your ability to, it's social status. But what I also lumped into here was remaining hidden, which I think I might move down to feather. So I think this might be the sneaky stuff. So I think social stuff and reputation. And this can be related to like in the city of Nest and amongst the court itself. So like, how do you stand in the Corvid Court right now? But also, how does your reputation and maybe the Corvid Court's reputation by extension sit in the city of Nest because of your actions? And then feather can be the sneaky stuff. It could be, I like, but what about, I don't have resources. I don't have resources in here. So social stuff, reputation, it's social circles here. Feather is sneaky stuff, but I kind of like, so we need, like in Inspire, they've got silver. In Heart, they've got, what is it? Gear? It's just called gear? I don't remember. top of my head. Supplies. Supplies. So they got supplies in heart, silver in spire. What do you do with that? I think there needs to be a resources. I mean, if I were to just straight up use Spire's stuff, yeah, shinies are the magpies. If I were just to, well, the currency in Nest is called seed. Um, I could just use that. I could just call it. I could call seed the track. If I were to just like straight up take or like use the resistance. So the resistance toolkit specifically says like track the things that you would actually need to resist. Things that would be uh some sort of like yeah, so rather than tracking money, because I hate tracking individual money, you just have a resources resistance track. A safety resistance track. They give lots of really cool examples too. Like this is office politics one. Management, colleagues, and home. Those are your three resistance tracks. I think that's really good, actually. I think that's great. Um, so if I were to try and make this a more complete experience, then I think you would need something that is resources, something that's your sneaky stuff, your social stuff. Mind and body. Yeah, I think mind and body is fine. I at first thought like mind isn't necessary because there's no like, but it's got to be there. We've got birds that can literally like mind control people and like jabber literally insanely out into the ether. The J does that. So I think we need some sort of resources thing. I think that's important. Um, additional resistance slots. So that's another thing. So D3. See, here's where this shit's annoying to me. And this is another reason why I don't this is why I made resistance light is uh how much stress to inflict is another die. It's a different die. And it's not a D10, which is the die you're using for the core mechanic. So let's say you succeed on a task. Sometimes you need to like determine how much stress you inflict, and sometimes the GM needs to determine how much stress they inflict on you. Um, and like it's variable dice systems, and I don't like that. I don't like that. I do like this. I like this a lot about stress in NPCs, which is NPCs just have a flat stress value. So this NPC can take 3 stress, and when they take it, that's it. They're done. And that stress can be invoked in whatever way you want. It could be literally like pounding them to death, or it could be like talking them down. Yeah, it's clunky. It's clunky. And that's why I really like, not to toot my own horn, but that's why I like the resistance light approach that I took. My goal or my question is then like what can I do to add to Corvid Court that's not there already if I mostly kind of dip into the resistance light? Because there's a part of me that just says keep everything I had from like a core mechanic perspective. Maybe add this extra track or two in resistances because that will kind of expand the scope of what you're supposed to be doing in the game. Um, but like, I don't want to make more tracks. The Iron Sworn method of risk severity feels like it would work. I unfortunately don't know like anything about Iron Sworn. It's something I should read at some point. It's fucking huge. I've never read it. Um, Jeremy Gage, a very good friend of mine in the design community, constantly cites Iron Sworn. In fact, it was like part of his inspiration when he was working on the GM stuff for Nova. And I have to kind of just trust Jeremy knows what he's talking about because I don't know anything about it. So narrative position decides the scale of risk. Kind of like in Blades, right? Blades, you're at like controlled, risky, desperate, and then there's effect, right? Okay, so it's similar to Blades. Worth reading the SRD. Is the SRD also a million pages long? I'd read it. It's something I've asked myself to do now is try to read a new RPG every week just to keep up and be aware of other stuff that's going on. Like today, I got Reliquary in the mail by Gordy Murphy. I'm looking forward to reading this. I'll probably just read this today, just because I like Gordy. I like the stuff that he does, and I just think it's a really cool looking zine. So I'll probably read Reliquary today. Ooh, that's really nice. A cool back. Um, so I wrote like all these notes for this, and I'm gonna just put a note here that says like, please, uh, please, I cannot type. Please consider just using Corvid Court mechanic, and see if that necessarily fundamentally changes a lot of the stuff that I would otherwise have to do throughout the transition from Resistance Light to what I think is going to be Resistance Medium. I don't think it's going to be full-blown Resistance because I just can't see myself doing like the D10s with the variable dice and shit like that. That's just not. I don't play games like that. So I don't write games like that. That's okay. Okay. What else do we need? So we have some sense of this. Removing stress. I like this. And I think this is really important and cool. Um, removing stress. There are three ways to do it, if I remember correctly. It is, you should have a refresh of some kind. So something that your character loves to do. They're very good at it, or it's the thing that kind of like pushes them towards their purpose. Um, so the crows in Corvid Court are the big mean ones, they're the bullies. So to refresh, to like relieve some of your stress, you destroy a symbol of opposition from one of the court's foes. So you just go wreck somebody's house, somebody that is an anti-Corvid Court person, and that feels good to you, and so you get rid of your stress that way. Other ways are literally wait it out. You can do that. I know the books oftentimes say things like bullies. I think they like to be called the muscle. I think you're right, Sir Heck. I think they like to be called the muscle. I can't remember what I actually wrote there. Crows are made to kill, literally. They have the murder skill for a reason. That was fun. That was fun to write. You can literally wait it out, but that has narrative consequences. And then there's the third one. Oh, Fallout. Right. Yeah. Uh, you can remove narratively. See, again, like, I don't like this shit is annoying to me. Removing variable amounts of stress. So, literally wait it out with narrative consequences. Narrative action that removes stress. For me, it's going to be flat, not variable. And then there's Fallout. So it's four ways, actually. But one of them is out of your control. Fallout you can't control, so I shouldn't put it in here. Relieves stress. Because Fallout is a big problem. It's a big problem that you suffer, and it's based off of having usually high amounts of stress. So I like that. So Fallout, here's the cool stuff, and here's the stuff that immediately I deviated. This is like my biggest deviation besides like the D10 pool, is how Fallout works. So here's how a roll in Spire works, because it's not clear yet in the SRD. You have skills and domains. You put together a D10 dice pool based off of what skill the action calls for, and if the what the domain that's relevant to the task is, or if you have a domain relevant to the task. One of my favorite examples is the one that they use in the book, which is you might have like the academia domain, which obviously is going to help you when you're in academic like settings in terms of like researching stuff. But if you are in a fight in a library, the academia domain still applies because you understand the layout of the library and that can help you in the fight. I think that's fucking brilliant. I think that's so good. So, do you have a domain that's relevant and the skill that seems appropriate for the action? So that's usually like 2 dice, 2 d10 that you'll get right there. Maybe if you allow assistance, then you can get another d10. Knacks are in like the full version. I don't think I'm going to do knacks. That's where if you like were to earn a skill again through advancement and it's the same skill you already have, then you gain like a specialization within that skill. It's too granular for me. And then you subtract dice based off of difficulty. So you end up with a dice pool. You roll it. Figure out based off of the dice ranges that I mentioned earlier. And there's a lot of different ranges, right? There's 5 different states that could outcome. Crit fail, crit success, total failure, and then 2 successes with stress without. Sound involved enough yet? We're not done. Then you pick the highest result, figure out your result, and then you check for Fallout. It sounds like I'm slamming this system. I do love it. I do love it. I love the games that are made by it. But like we were talking about earlier, I think it's slow for what it needs to be. It's a narrative system, so it should flow, and it doesn't flow. So each time a character takes stress, so let's say you succeed with stress, GM checks for Fallout. So this is a GM task. This is not for the players to do. They roll a d10. So they're rolling an entirely separate die. So now they're going to roll a die and compare it to the current total stress across all the tracks. Not the track that just had stress put onto it, but all of the tracks of the player. So I mentioned like the 5 tracks here. We're tracking a lot of stress across 5 different things. I roll a d10, compared against all of that. If the d10 is lower, they suffer a fallout. Now, what fallout do they suffer? Well, that depends on how much stress they had. And then it becomes minor, moderate, severe. Fuck. Right? Like that's so much. That's so much to do. And I think this right here is why I don't want to do a Resistance full game. Because like this, why is the GM rolling an extra die that is a reflection of the player's role, not an action of a GM character, but just like a reflection of the outcome of the player's role? No. No. So let me remind myself how it works in mine. So the more stress a bird takes, the more likely if the highest die in a roll is less than or equal to the current stress for that resistance, based off of whatever track would be appropriate, you suffer fallout. So it's not an extra die. The bird is determining it, meaning the player is determining it. And you're just doing something like, if I'm punching somebody, then I know it's related to my claw stress track, and I just compare the highest die in the roll to how much stress I have. And if the highest die, which is the die that I'm using for my outcome, is less than or equal to the resistance. So basically, if I roll shitty and I've got a little bit of stress, this is going to be problematic for me. This check is made after marking any stress for the consequences of the roll. Now, the way I wrote it in my opinion, looking at it now, a year later, is not as clear as I'd like it to be. But that's me looking at it a year in hindsight. But wow, that moves so much faster, doesn't it? Now, what do we gain from Fallout if we were to use the SRD? If we were to use the SRD as is, we gain the here's the things that we gain that I know I've listened to Grant talk about this. Um, and the book talks about this, Spire talks about this, is that the players don't necessarily track their stress. They track they that's the GM's job, is to track the stress of the players. So the players don't know how much stress they have. At least that's the way that you are encouraged to play. You don't have to play that way. That's the way that you are encouraged to play in the book. So that the GM's job is to narratively describe how stressed you feel in these various things, but you don't know numerically how many boxes you've checked in. Because the GM's going to be the one to determine if you have fallout. So they need to know how much stress you have in a track at a given time. So you gain suspense, which like is not enough for me. Like that alone is not an incentive for doing this. The other thing you get, which this is kind of cool, but can still be pulled off using the way that I'm doing Fallout, is breaking Fallout into these different categories: minor, moderate, and severe. Because the book has tons of really awesome Fallout examples. And I only put like a couple in there, and I don't give you any advice in Corvid Court about like when to use any of these Fallouts, like which are worse, which are better, and but like this is great. Like there's a whole section on minor Fallouts across the various resistance tracks, and then there's moderate Fallouts, and you can see how they kind of build in intensity. I think that's really good. So I would like to, what I'm trying to say is I would like to take the minor, moderate, severe, maybe just do minor and moderate, or maybe I'll call it minor and major, and then keep with my way that I'm doing resistant or Fallout. Okay, so Fallout. Keep the way it works in CC. Implement a way to do a minor major split, which then means I get to create Fallout lists for the tracks. This is fun. I have to note that down for myself, that I will have fun doing that. That'll be cool. All the ways these birds can be broken. Okay. Fallout tables. Yeah, you could do a table, right? Fallout table could be interesting. Tables? Question mark? Tables are cool. Yeah, you'd have to come up with enough things for each track for like a minor major split, but that would be kind of cool. Gives the GM something to roll on. It'd be the only thing they roll on, because there's no other rolling for the GM. Players could still roll on it, of course. Okay, okay. How are we doing here? We got Fallout. They talk a lot about Fallout. They talk about creating Fallout options. They give out examples of all the Fallout. See, like, Fallout is really important to this. Why is Fallout so important in Resistance? Because a couple of reasons. One, it relieves stress. Two, it gives stakes to the game. Building up stress means nothing, right? Like, you're not actually hurt. Like, you're not going from a set amount of HP to zero, where when you hit zero, you know you're dead. You're just building up stress. And that stress truly means nothing until it evolves into a Fallout, until it becomes a consequence. So these are the actual consequences of your actions. So they're important. And third, and again, I keep saying this. Grant has talked about this. I've listened to Grant talk about Spire a lot, which is people want Fallout. Once you realize these games are not happy like power fantasies, you get into the idea of like oh shit, my character's getting beaten up and kicked around, and that's kind of cool. That's kind of fun. That's you want to live in that environment. That's why you play Corvid Court. That's why you play Spire. You don't do it because you want to be the most powerful person in the world. You are political revolutionaries who are probably going to get a bullet to the back of the head, and it's probably going to be because your family member ratted on you, and that's kind of cool. That's kind of fun. So Fallout is interesting. Skills. Okay. Skills and domains. Those are the other big things. I talked about those before. So these are the things that are used to make your dice pool. Skills and domains. Skills are things you do. Domains are, I'll call them like abstract knowledge. Right? It's like concepts that you know. Or background stuff. So skills. You make a skill list. These are the things that, again, like I said, what your character can do. And they make like a really interesting point here. Fewer skills rather than more. And I think this is important. Grouping skills. So, for example, just have a fight skill instead of something that has shoot, melee, unarmed, shotgun, rifle, pistol, sniper, everything like that, right? Like, what if you just said, this is your fight skill. You use this to fight people. And that's all you did. That's all you need to do. What do I have in Corvid Court? I have 7 skills. 7 skills in Corvid Court. I've got Caw, commanding, compelling, persuading; Chirp, deceiving, lying, misdirection; Dive, pursuing and hunting and chasing; Glide, sneaking, avoiding, blending; Murder, that's your hurting people skill; Spy, studying, perceiving, and understanding; and Swoop, which is stealing, finesse, and throat cutting. Need a Peck. Oh, Peck is good. Could I change one of these to Peck? Maybe Swoop could be changed to Peck. Swoop is stealing, finesse, throat cutting. A Peck feels precise, right? So maybe like Peck represents like nabbing something off somebody. A finesse of it's an action of finesse. Maybe it also could be throat cutting. What do you think? I think maybe Swoop could be changed to Peck. Here's it's targeted, which makes you feel like it's a finesse sort of thing. Of all of these, the one that is the least bird-like is Spy. Caw, Chirp, Dive, Glide, Murder. Murder, I mean murder just because it's crows. Spy, and Swoop. Peck feels like assassination. I I could change Murder to Peck, which is the harm skill, right? Just would be such a shame to lose the murder skill. But perhaps that's appropriate. Right, bird pun. It's a good bird pun, right? The murder? I think it's a good bird pun. But do I maintain it? Sir Heck likes it. Anyway, I'm going to write down Peck just so that I have that as something to like think about. CC has 7 already. Probably don't want more. Incorporate Peck? Perhaps? How many are in Spire? Just bookmark the character sheet so that I can keep coming back to it. Spire has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 skills. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 skills and 9 domains. So slightly more involved. Here's something that I've seen people talking about Blades in the Dark. which is that there's inconsistencies, or it's not so clear what the different skills do, because you got 12 in Blades in the Dark. Because you got the three different kind of like categories that it gets broken up into, um, and then four in each of them. And I get that. When I Blades is my favorite game to run. I love it so much, but sometimes it feels like I either have a hard time deciding which skill is supposed to be used, or some skills just simply don't get used. So I want to borrow from what the toolkit is telling us, which is use less. Um, and also don't put skills in there that wouldn't be in your game. So there's not going to be a skill for like protecting people. That's not the point of the Corvid Court. They're not there to protect anybody. So, um, less and broad skills. It's interesting that they put domains in the skills section, because I think of them as like the same thing but also differently. Be bird, do crime. Exactly. Be bird, do crime. Um, so domains, same thing. Corvid Court uh, has 7. That has 7 domains. And here's a big thing to note that I got to write down for myself while I remember it. The 7 domains, CC has 7 of them. These should be represented in the setting part of your book. This is a big thing in Spire. And I love this about how Spire divides up their book. I think it probably, there's a million ways they could have set up their setting section. And I kind of like how they did it, where they've split it up into categories rather than like going up the different districts. So here's everybody and every place that is about the concept of order. So which districts in the city of Spire are related to order? Which factions are related to order? So that's like your cops and shit like that, right? Districts and factions of religion. So which parts of the city are related to religion? And then there's like crime, right? Which parts of the city are related to crime? Low society, and that's because low society, high society is a huge distinction in Spire. So you have setting sections that highlight these domains, because I've got in here in these domains, like one of the first domain is bind, which is about like law, order, and bureaucracy. So I should have stuff in the book that talks about that. There's also something here about occult, which implies, as the book says, the arcane arts of Nest. Should probably talk about how there's occultism going on in this. There's courts, and then there's crime. Those are two different things. Courts then tell you that there's like a legitimate way of doing crime. Crime tells you that it's the illegal way of doing crime. Then there's like worship, and I say the many faiths, followings, creeds of Nest. So like that implies that there's different sorts of things, and that also maybe implies that it's different than occultism. So that's just a really important thing to note here. Here's something I love that I wrote this combat section in Corvid Court, and I'm going to need to consider this when I think about stress, inflicting stress in terms of hurting people. What happens when a bird decides to hurt somebody? You'll most likely be rolling murder, plus any domain. NPCs don't have hit points to whittle down. The assumption is that if you try to murder someone and you succeed, they are murdered. There we go, right? If you're facing a particularly formidable or dangerous foe, maybe you have to hit them a few times before they drop, but I'll let your GM decide that. There's so much of that shit in this book where I just say, I don't know. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do every scenario. You figure it out. And that's just sort of how I write stuff. I should write that I should write that as a thing for me to consider in stress and combat. Flat, insta-kill, dangerous foes? Just something to consider. Okay. So, like, I'm going to have a lot of fun looking at these domains and playing around with building the city of Nest based around this stuff. Because the city of Nest is represented with, like, a page. Yeah. There's a single page with some abstract bullets that tell you what the city, the setting is kind of like. But that's it. So that's going to be one of the big things about Corvid Court, the complete version, is there's going to be a lot more of the setting stuff. What does that mean? It means I might have to address the fact that I have not explicitly told you you are people or birds. A map would be fucking awesome. Yes, that would be really cool to get. Do I dare reveal? Can I somehow write a full book where I don't reveal whether or not you are a bird or a person? Pulled it off of the zine. Can I pull it off for, like, double the length? Maybe. Probably not. Alright, what else do we need for resistance? Knacks? Not doing them. Not interested in knacks. No knacks. Nah, just not interesting to me. Yeah, so here's some examples of skills. It's interesting that they don't give examples of domains. Why don't they do that? The domains are, like, the most interesting thing to me. Like, skills are obvious. Skills are things that we see in literally every game. Like, all RPGs have skills. Not all, but, like, so many do. But why? Why don't they talk more about domains? They should talk more about domains. Bonds. This stuff is interesting, but, like, not enough. Not enough for me to want to put it in the book. So, like, you have NPCs that you bond to. This is something. Oh, shit. Wait, this isn't something that I want to completely ignore. Bonds. Seasons. Go look at seasons. Good point, Sir Hack. Bonds are related to how long-term you want a game to be. I'll be right back. I have to go grab seasons. All right. Seasons is my other Resistance-like game. It's about... This setting is the one that I'm most excited about. I might do, like, a combo where I write both of these up as full, or what I guess I'm calling Resistance Medium now, games. I wrote a lot more with Seasons, because I think the world of Seasons is so much more interesting. I think it's very cool. Pardon me, I have to cough. Don't want to do that. So I put this in the book. I put bonds in here. I know I did. Just have to find it. It's been a real long time. Yes, okay, so bonds are in seasons. They link the masks, which is the name for the PCs, to one another, but also to the city. So that means you have, like, kind of two types of bonds. You have one that is to fellow players, and then you have bonds to the city itself. Sorry, I have something in my throat. Bonds can be used two ways, boost and burn. Once per session, you can use your bond to give an additional d6 to a roll. Boom, right? If a bond is relevant, a bond to an NPC, or like a part of the city, or or to a fellow PC, to a mask is relevant, you can add a d6 to your roll. You can burn a bond, which removes that bond permanently. When you do that, you remove all of the stress from any resistance track that you have. And then you kind of explain why that happened. But then you can forge a new bond. At the end of a session, if a mask has any empty bonds, they may replace one based on the actions during the performance. Performance is the name of a session. You must replace it with the same type. So you can't replace like a city bond with another PC bond. Fuck, this is actually good tech. Sometimes I'm good at this. Sometimes I pull this off. Okay, so Seasons has bonds. PC and city level bonds that used two ways. Boost, burn. Maybe I'll come up with some fun bird terms for this. Maybe I won't. Boost, add a d6 if the bond is relevant. Burn, erase the bond, but remove all stress from any track. And then you make new bonds at end of session if you are missing it. Hell yeah! I forgot that I did that. That's so much better. Yes, that's good tech. Also, just reading that one page makes me want to do so much more Seasons. This is the game that I am most heartbroken about not getting attention. And I mean, it's understandable. It's not as cool looking as Corvid Court. I did all the layout of Seasons. But I think like the premise of Seasons, like the story, the setting, and the way that your characters are built out of like two parts, court and house, is much more akin to Heart, which is something that I like, where you pick like your calling and then your class, which I think is very cool. And that's something that we're going to get to in a little bit. This will be a longer stream, I'm realizing. It's okay. But I think I really want to return to this. This is my heartbreaker. This is the one that and by heartbreaker, I mean it's heartbreaking to me that it didn't get noticed as much. But maybe I'm going to come back to it because I always really wanted to like dive into Seasons, and then I just got impatient and I just wrote it and sent it out. Okay, bonds taken care of. Bond fallout. We don't need to worry about that. Don't need to worry about bond level. Well, I mean, it's the PC and yeah. Okay, we're good there. Equipment. I think we can skip this entire section. I don't think we need it. Equipment is if you want to get into like variable stress and stuff like that. This is unnecessary if we're just doing a simplified stress system. Because this is one more thing you have to do when you are doing an action, especially an action of like combat, is you roll a variable die to determine how much stress you inflict. Like that sucks. If you have a weapon that can do D8 stress and you roll a 1, like that just sucks. That's not fun at all to me. I like flat damage. I like given outcomes. I love tags. I think tags are cool. So, not in terms of variable damage weapons and shit. But could an interesting list of equipment gear be made just to use tags? Because I think tags are cool. I think the concept of tags are really fun, especially if they're mostly narrative. Like they would actually be entirely narrative because if we're not doing stuff like deals extra harm against blank, um, then this could be cool. Like this could just be, you get to really just like lean into fun, extremely narrative tags. So I guess I won't say no entirely to this. Perishable items over equipment. What a cool idea, Dice Ghost. I kind of dig that. I think I dig that. Let's write that down. Um, yeah, so like consumables. Consumables instead of static gear. I love that. You like roll or pick a few at start of session. Maybe related to your class. Right? Then you use tags with those too. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. That's much more interesting to me than like you can see, like they talk a lot about weapons, tags, and then like armor. Not gonna do any of that. Gotta spend that seed. That's an interesting idea too, right? Like you get X number of consumable items at the start of a session, and then you can like just take some seed stress right away to take more with you in the session. Or like you take seed stress to just add more tags to stuff. All the different food guilds. I Sir Heck, I need I need you on this because you know so much about birds and this is good stuff. This is so good. Piscivores. Is that fish? Piscivores, would that be like fish? This is me desperately trying to understand words that I've never seen before. Just finish your comprehensive order. Oh, okay. Yes, I did it. Fish. It is fish. Sir Hack, I will definitely be knocking on your door. Especially with like setting stuff, because I think that'll be invaluable. And I think you will be invaluable when it comes time to do the aviary. You kind of already made something, didn't you? Um, that would be pretty neat. Armor, don't care about it. Like this, wouldn't it be cool if these were just had like interesting tags that weren't D6 piercing, but like really fun, strange things? that that supplement for Corvid Court you made is very cool. Advancement. Here is a huge deviation between Spire and Heart. And this sucks that it's coming up here before we've like talked about character creation. Because like, here's characters right here. And this, I get why it's here because of how Spire does it. But I think I want to do it the way that Heart does it. So here's how advancement works in... I'm just going to follow the order of the SRD, but I will probably need to move these around in my doc because it won't make sense putting it here before the character class stuff or character creation. Advancement in Spire. Did you do something? Did you impact the city? That's the big question you ask in Spire is, did your actions cause some sort of change, some sort of impact on the city of Spire? It's not, did you succeed or not? It's not a series of questions that you ask at the end of the session to like mark XP. There's no XP. And I like that. No XP. I don't need XP. I don't need to track that stuff. Did you impact the city? And like the toolkit says, they've got to split up into like categories: minor, major, low, medium, high. So for example, in Spire, you flip to a class here. So here's the knight class. All right, they've got their core traits, equipment, abilities, and then advances: low, medium, and high advances. Right. So there's 3 levels of advancement in Spire. And you get access to the medium advances when you do something of medium import to the city. And they give some advice on what exactly that means. The high ones are like incredibly powerful, like world-changing stuff. So it means you got to do something important to get access to them. Heart only splits it into two, I believe. I think it's just two. There's like the regular stuff, and then there's no, it's three. So it's minor, major, and then the zenith. The zenith though are like these are your death advancements, as in like your character's done. You're gonna do something ridiculous now, but your character's dead or out of the story or has like one session left because here's this ridiculous thing that you can do. The interesting thing that they did with Heart is that there are fewer major abilities, but instead they have like um, variants within them, so you can make. They only have like four, for example, four major abilities, but you can make them more powerful by like adding more stuff that each major ability can do. I think that stuff is cool. So, um, anyway, I don't need to tell you what the other systems do. It's broken up into like minor, major, and then like zenith slash high, maybe a zenith slash high. Your last flight sort of thing before you're done. Um, Now, how do you get access to these? Like I said, Inspire, you get access to them based off of did you do a minor thing to the city, a major thing to the city, something ridiculous to the city? Heart does it the coolest way ever, the way that I love it the most. Um, Beats. Again, I don't think you can see any of the stuff that I'm trying to show you. Beats. All right, so what are beats? They break them up into minor and major beats, which every time you accomplish one of these beats, you get a minor or major advancement. What is a beat? A beat is a thing that you want to do during the session. It's like a goal, or it's something that you want to have happen in the session, something that you want to manifest, and you tell these to the GM at the start of the session so that the GM knows what your character cares about. What a cool idea, right? Now the GM is catering the session, they're shaping the session, they're flavoring the session with stuff that the players care about. You're getting player buy-in by listening to these beats. It's so cool. So, for example, and it's really cool. So like this particular so like here's a class that's just like the adventurer class. So you just want to go adventuring into the heart. What are some minor beats? You could do something like slay a beast that drops some sort of resources. Access a haven in tier 2 of the heart. Or it could be something extremely narrative, like charm somebody with tales of your exploits. That's cool. You're an adventurer. You want people to talk about your stories. There's also like bad shit on this list too. Take major blood fallout. That's something you normally don't want to have happen, but you're like, yeah. Let's do this thing. Let's like I wanna get the shit kicked out of me this session. That's cool. Have a cocktail, fighting move, or legendary beast named after you. That's so cool. That's so cool. And then there's like the zenith beats too, like the ones that like this is clearly the indicator of the end of your thing. But this is great. So I like the callings. I want to do the callings. Um, I want to use the beats. Now I need to figure out how I want to do beats, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But uh, I love this shit. I think it's really cool. I think it's very good tech. Um, Beats. Use them. But how? That's what I gotta figure out. Alright, what am I missing out? Yeah, making the game more collaborative is great. Yes, Sir Heck, I'm so excited about Locomotive. I can't wait to see that. That sounds like a very cool game. Um, the The time train. It's a great way to opt into the themes, looking for ways to work it in. Yeah, it's all very good tech. Okay. So the reason advancement is earlier in the SRD than like character creation is because uh, the beat stuff is based off of heart, and this SRD is not based off of heart. It's based off of Spire. So, character. Now that you know all of that, what is a character? Right? What do you need? You need that refresh, right? So here's all the stuff that you have. And I think you see a lot of this stuff in Spire, or sorry, in Seasons and in Corvid Court. Skills and domains. So you get some base. So this is class based, right? We should mention that this is a class based. They go on and talk about like doing classless, like pick and mix sort of stuff, which I that's fine. Classless games are fun. I've played classless games that are fun. It's not my thing. At least when I design games. I design games with classes in them because I find classes are extremely evocative. You get the opportunity to create abilities that are extremely on brand for a class, which feel very cool, instead of having to come up with a list of generic abilities that could kind of apply to everybody, or even like really evocative abilities, but then try and explain why you have a certain set of abilities that wouldn't, like, they don't narratively mesh with one another. Having classes is cool to me. If you like classes, that's cool too. And I'm not saying classless is bad. I just like class-based systems, and that's why. Okay, so what do you need? What does a class need? What is a character made of? So there's their class, but at heart you have your calling as well. That's where the beats come from. So like you get your beats from your calling. And so the question is, do I make calling something in the game? And what would calling be? Because the classes in Corvid Court right now, there's the 4. I'll probably want to make like 1 or 2 more for the full book, so you have more options, right? Got to go find some more Corvids to put in the book. But the classes, as is, crows, ravens, magpies, and jays. I need some sort of goal to think about this stuff, right? Yeah, so like what's the goal? Like what's the point? What are the corps generally aiming to do? Yeah, you're the bad guys. But that's true. We need like we need more than just you're bad people. You're bad people doing worse things to the worst people. Um yes. We need more focus on like setting and shit like that, right? Um why are you why are you doing this? Um and then why individually the PCs are doing it, that is what the beats are, right? The beats are meant to represent why you are part of the Corvid Court. So, yeah, something around why are you doing this is actually a really good character generation thing. Yeah, it is. It's great. It's good tech. It's a good idea. Um, so in Heart, the callings are why are you going into the heart? What compels you to go to this nightmare realm? So what could be the equivalent of calling for this? It could be like background, right? Like background. Um, what did you do before you joined the court? But like, why are your beats related to that? like let's just say you and because I there's background stuff in here. Um, or that was no, yeah, there is background stuff in here, but like who cares? The background stuff in here gave you access to skills and domains because by combining your background and your class, then you had like a decent amount of skills and domains to start with. Um, but like ultimately, none of this. Like if you were a scholar before, why would your beats still be scholarly if you're in the Corvid Court? I guess they could be. If you were wealthy before, you provide a face of legitimacy to the court and a revenue stream if they need it. Why endanger your comfortable lifestyle to work for the court? What responsibilities do you need to keep up with? I guess I do talk about this in the background stuff of like, what about your background was compelling to the court for them to recruit you? And like, maybe why do you still do this? Maybe the beats could be related to background. I think that's interesting, actually, now that I think about it. I was originally confused about the idea, but the more I talk about it, the more it seems reasonable. Seems a reasonable thing to do. Okay. What is your personal goal over the yeah, exactly. Exactly. What is your personal goal over the overall goal, right? Like the Corvid Court has its own things and you're part of the organization. You're doing your job, right? You're part of the group. You're doing what you need to do, what you've been tasked to do. But what else do you care about? Like, if I did this with seasons, it's interesting. Seasons, there's two places you could do it. Um, the seasonal courts, so fall, winter, etc., or the house that you're a part of. I think it makes more sense for it to be the house rather than the courts. But we're not working on seasons right now. Okay. Okay. So a calling, which I think we're going to probably maybe use the background stuff. We'll expand on the background stuff. Add beats to that. Um, let's see. What else do you need? Extra slots. Don't need that. Skills. We got that. That'll be represented in calling and class. Refresh. I've got that already in the book. Bonds. We know what we're going to do with bonds now. So now I'm just going to take the bond tech from Seasons and put it into Corvid Court. Two or more abilities. I've got. This is the part that's going to be the most fun to do. Um, classes. Okay, so obviously they need a refresh. They need the bonds. Like I said, just put this on a new page. But they need a core ability or abilities, right? The few things that you just are good at already from the very beginning, and then uh, all the abilities you can earn via your beats. Minor, major, zenith. I don't like calling it zenith. I don't like that. High. High also doesn't feel good. Maybe. Alright, I'm just going to put zenith for now. I'll worry about words later. Unless there's a really obvious bird word that I'm missing that Sir Heck knows. um, Sorry, just getting a text about the status of my dog. She's playing in a dog park right now, and I just need to make sure she's having a good old time. Looks like she is. So don't worry about that. She's doing great. Okay. Apex. Apex is fun. Look at you two. You both came up with the idea at the same time. Very fun. Apex is good. We're going to put that in for now. Minor and major probably aren't going to stick either, so who cares about words? Refresh. bonds, abilities, equipment. So we need to think about equipment. Question mark. Class-based, or just grab some from the consumable shop. Think about it. Think about it. Refresh. Abilities. Look at this. Like, this is so fun. This is why I like class-based games, because I read things like Spire, and I read the abilities that the classes have, and they're awesome. They're super cool. Many of them, mechanically, mean nothing. Like, they don't change dice rolls, they don't do anything, but it's just like a huge narrative swing that you can do. Like, being able to tell when somebody is lying. That's what all the Corvid Court abilities are. So getting to sit down and come up with way more than just the 4 that I have for each of these, that's the fun stuff. So, you know, uh, like here's one for J. You gain the bind skill if you didn't already have it. Your words create an unseen bond between between typo. Great job, Spencer. Between you and those you deal with. Anyone who promises you something and breaks that promise will drop dead. That's fucking awesome, right? That's awesome. That's so good. That's the angle I try to take with the is it Icterid? I don't know how you're gonna be able to tell me that through typing, but through the stuff that you made, Sirhack. Like the type of crime each class could specialize in was super important. Icterid. Cool. Excellent. Thank you. Yes, that's a really good point. Like, what kind of crime would this bird be good at? And then come up with the abilities that are related to that. That, I mean, I mentioned it before. Let me just, no, I closed it. I wonder if I just search Icterid, if it will. Yeah, okay. It's the only thing on itch that has that name. It's so good, everybody. It's so good. Let me re-download it and put it up on the screen. Ba, 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 ba. Look at that. Yeah. The bluebirds. I think the grackles were my favorite, if I'm remembering correctly. Da, 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 da. Look at this is so good. Once per session, you may case one establishment that you want to break out of or into. The GM will tell you the best, worst, and somewhere between ways to exit without telling you which is which. Come on, that's so good. Isn't that so? Oh, it's too small on the screen for you maybe to see. That's so good. I think that's really funny. I think that's really good. There's just so many cool things like that you absolutely nailed exactly the idea of um what crimes would this bird be good at, and abilities just emphasize that and then just make you especially good at that crime. It's great. It's really really good. So that'll be the fun thing to do. Abilities, fiction, gonna do classes. And then I think we're at the end. NPC. So then we have to... This is the last thing to kind of think about here is NPCs. In Resistance, a enemy in Spire-based Resistance has a difficulty rating. They have difficulty. And then they have resistance, which is how much stress they can take. And then their equipment. That's all you need. Here's the thing. Let's think about how I address all of these things in Corvid Court. Difficulty doesn't exist if I'm using my D6 dice pool. Resistance, how much stress can this thing take, doesn't exist if I'm just saying if you want to hurt something or kill something, it's killed or hurt based off of your roll. And equipment would just be like consumable stuff, which means this is all the SRD way of doing things, which I don't think we're going to do. None of these apply. None of these apply to how Corvid Court works. So, what would my NPCs do? If I even need to write stuff for them. What makes a good NPC? Just a couple of pieces of information about them, right? Like their disposition towards you, their goal, what do they want? Their motives. Yeah, exactly. Narrative stuff. Appearance. Yes. What do they look like, right? Isn't that much more interesting than how much resistance they can take? Of course, I'm not saying that that stuff's not covered in the SRD, but I think that should be I think that should just be part of it, right? Ooh, NPC truths like minor beats. How fun! How fun! Right? Like the goals, motives, the things that they want to accomplish. Goal, motives, and means. Like what can they do? Right? What are they capable of doing? And I think that's all you need. And maybe there's more, but I don't think we need to think too much about it. Look at this. I wrote all this, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to just scrap all this and just do what I did before. Okay. That's it. We went through the SRD. We wrote out the stuff that applies to Corvid Court, what we need, what we don't need. I think I have a better sense about what a more complete version of this looks like. It involves expanding on backgrounds to put it in beats, coming up with more fallouts, maybe some sort of way of triggering it in degrees, maybe. Skills I feel we're good at. Domains I feel we're good at. A lot of setting stuff to write. Incorporate the bond tech. Equipment, really play around with this. And then coming up with way more abilities. This is going to be super fun. This is all like the fun stuff. The hard stuff is done. Core mechanics and all that stuff, done. You just need to supplement them with a couple of other mechanics. And then I've already got some of that tech taken care of. This is going to be fun. Now, like logistically, what else needs to be done? I don't know. Think about art and layout and stuff like that, but that's future Spencer's problem to figure out. I will admit, I want to take a stab at doing layout again. I'm not going to copy Maria's style. What Maria did here is special and unique and fits the vibe of the original Fever Dream of Corvid Court. But I think the layout of the bigger book will look different. And it's gonna be my shot at it, my shot at layout. Because I'm doing that with light. I'll probably do it with seasons too. Look at me, I'm just going back to all my old games. I can feel my voice going away. You can tell I just don't talk to people very much, talking for an hour and a half. So I think that's a good sign to wrap this up. Hey, thanks so much everybody for watching. This was a total blast to, first of all, go through the Resistance Toolkit. I think it's, you know, I think I came off maybe more negative than I intended. I love the Resistance. Obviously, I love the system. I've written 2 games based off of it, and I'm coming back to it. There's just things that I like to do to tweak it to fit my style. So if you're interested in Resistance stuff, you should definitely check it out. If you're interested in seeing how I approach it, you almost certainly already own this because of the Black Lives Matter bundle that came out last year. Seasons is the other one that I did, and I'm gonna brew on this Corvid Court stuff. But for now, I'm going to stop talking, because I'm tired. Thanks everybody for coming in or coming out. Appreciate it. Enjoy your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is you are. And I'll talk to you all later. Bye.